We'll start questions to Coach's right with Jacob as he settles in.
Coach, a pretty competitive first half. You guys, have the lead going to the locker room. Just kind of, what do you think kind of went wrong in the second half there?
Well, they made 17 threes for the game, 8 in the first half, 9 in the second. We had back-to-back halves with 8 turnovers. Turnovers has become a bigger issue for us the last 4 or 5 games than it was prior. And, it's just hard to beat good teams when you're not getting a shot on goal and you're giving them multiple opportunities. And, they did, what they're doing this year. They're turning people over, they're pressing, they're playing up and down, and they really are high on 3 and rim rate. And that's what happens. When you get to the rim, you usually get to the line a little more often than the other team, and then they shoot a lot of threes, and they made way too high of a percentage of them. So those were the factors that I thought, played a huge part in the outcome of the game.
We'll go ahead to Sam, and then we'll get it to Colin.
Yeah, the three-point shooting from Georgia, just what do you think kind of led into their success and kind of the struggles from your end on that aspect?
Well, a lot of it resulted from, their ball screens. They have excellent spacing. Coach White has done a tremendous job of flipping how they play. It's a complete different style than I've ever seen his teams play, and they bought into it, and they're playing it at a really high level, and it fits, their personnel with their depth, with their length. It allows them to play a lot of guys because you have to when you play that style. And we elected, for the most part, to be pretty aggressive on our ball screen and dribble handoff coverage, where for the most part throughout the year we haven't, for a number of different reasons. But we felt that was the best chance to give us the best chance overall to win the game. And got our defense kind of spread out, and we didn't get enough tips and deflections when we were aggressive on the ball. And a couple times our bigs, as we're trying to be aggressive and hot the ball screen and get 2 on the ball, they would let them turn the corner, and then it's 4 versus 3, and they were doing a good job of making the right decisions and the right passes, and then obviously they made a really high percentage of them as well.
Josh's game kind of speaks for itself, and I think Georgia's biggest lead was with about 5 minutes left in the game. They're able to get that down. I know they still come up short, but what were you seeing from those guys out there in the last few minutes?
It's something that we talked about before the game. The biggest messaging we had, when senior day, it's always different. Your routine's different. The itinerary's different of when you start warm-ups, when they come back, when the staff talks to them about, different keys to the game, offense, defense, special teams, and then when I do mine, it's all kind of different. It's just cut up different that way. And so the things that we talked about toward the end were, trying to give this group of men that are, close to expiring their eligibility a good memory of their last home game. That's what we talked about. We had all their families, or they all had family here, some more than others, but they all had family here. And, we talked about that, like, they're all watching you. Let them feel really proud of you, not that they're not going to win or lose, but with your compete level. And that's what we focused on, was trying to make a memory of our last game, which obviously we didn't do. It's very disappointing that way. But I did feel like, for the most part, their compete level was pretty good. We certainly made mistakes. We talked about the turnovers. We were down 6-1 offensive rebounding at halftime, but, we did a much better job in the second half to try to almost even that score. But I thought the compete level was not why, we didn't win the game, which, for me, that's a standard that we've had, and it's something that at times this year, for parts of different games where it wasn't at the level that we're used to, and that's been disappointing, but I didn't think that was the case today.
We'll go middle right, Danny P., and then we'll slide it over to Jacob on the end.
Coach, you mentioned the seniors. You honored 6 today and threw a couple of managers even in there. But what has that group meant to this program? Some you've had longer than others, and they've all brought a little something extra, each to the table.
Yeah, they've all been good in terms of, being a part of the program and trying to insert themselves into the fabric of, Mississippi State basketball. And certainly in the era that we're coaching in now, it's just different. We had 6 seniors, but 5 of them were one-year guys. So, Sean Jones is a unicorn right now. He's a 4-year player, kept coming back, which every year, like every player does, for the most part now, they have a choice if they want to return or not, and certainly it's reciprocal at times as well. But, Sean stuck with us, and we stuck with him, and I'm really proud of him that he played today. He hadn't practiced since he got hurt. He hasn't practiced at all. He didn't even do shoot around today. He had to do a lot of things with our trainers and our doctors to get him in position to just play the game. And up until about 15 minutes on the game clock before we had to put starters in is when I got word that he felt like he could go. So I'm proud of him for that. It would have been easy for him to duck out and just, hey, because he has a real injury. But he did it for, the team, the program, and certainly, for himself. And if you notice, like, he only had a couple shots. He turned down some shots because of his injury, but, made unselfish plays to get others the ball. And it was nice to have him out there just with his length and activity, and he's usually pretty good defensively. So I'm glad he was able to play on his senior night. It would have been a sad deal. I got a chance to talk to his mom and stepdad prior, and then certainly right before we came up, and talked about how disappointed we were that this is his last home game in memory. But all the winning that he has been part of, and the NCAA tournaments that he's been a part of, that he'll have awesome memories from Mississippi State for the rest of his life.
We'll actually go middle back to Sam.
No, it's 5 straight losses, but this game was a lot more competitive than some of the others have been recently. And just in that aspect, does it feel like you can take any progress from this result, going in the SEC tournament?
I mean, at this point, you don't look at it. I don't look at it as, progress. Like, you might 5-6 games ago, we'd still be talking about that. But at this point, with 31 games under our belt now, it's either win or not. We don't have 6-8 games left, that we know we're going to play. But hopefully, the platform, the lights, we've talked a lot about that already. It's close to playing in the NCAA tournament as I've ever been. I've certainly been in the NCAA tournament a lot as an assistant, as a head coach. But the SEC tournament, my first year, I remember thinking, wow, that's really, really close to how it feels, the bright lights in the platform and what's going on around it. So we're going to treat it that way as well.
All right, thank you, guys. We'll see you Monday. We'll let you know what time in the group.
All right.